All right, and we are back again for another exciting adventure in the Reverse Web3 Comic-Con world this weekend. I am extremely excited to actually bring, I'm to actually kind of play a prank on everyone in this room here, because I have met all of you and know all of you, and Adam and Ricky and Tanya and Tino are meeting each other for the first time today. So what a great opportunity for me to just disappear for a few minutes and let the four of you figure out who each other are, what you're doing here, and what the nature of this conversation will be. And I can't wait to watch the rest of it back later. But I'm so glad you guys could join us today. Super excited about your projects. It's going to be an awesome conversation. So forgive my prank, but enjoy.
I love that we're your social experiment guinea pigs. Awesome. And then there were four.
And then there were four, exactly.
That's how quick it happens. It's magic for you. Smoke and mirrors. He doesn't really exist.
So no, I think obviously we've been familiar with JumpCut now. We met Dilip, I think, originally 6-7 months ago. Like we've known of your existence, we've known of your mission, but I'd love to hear from you both kind of what JumpCut is in the world. We've had some conversations around this, but kind of recap for us what JumpCut is, and then obviously diving in specifically to the projects and the approaches that you're kind of have kicked off recently and are kicking off tomorrow.
Correct.
Yes and yes. Yeah. Well, so JumpCut, our goal is to democratize Hollywood. That is, I know, like a very big and nebulous statement, but ultimately, as I think a lot of us, know who have been, following along today during Web3 Comic-Con, the Hollywood industry and the overall media landscape in general, when we look at publishing, when we look at movies, TV, is very much top down, and so everything that you see, on a streaming service, in a theater, on broadcast or cable, is really greenlit by an incredibly small group of executives at studios and streamers, and they're trying to de-risk their slate of projects, because TV, film, publishing is high stakes. There's a high failure rate. 80% of productions don't break even or turn a profit in their first year of being deployed, to public platforms. And because of that, we see that the creative process becomes very exclusionary because companies want to make sure that the projects that are being greenlit are going to be successful. And what does that mean practically? It means the same directors, the same showrunners, the same writers get their productions made, and that establishment, which goes back 30, 40 years, and we talk about the big names in the industry, often means that people of color, people of other, from the LGBTQIA plus community, women get completely excluded from the process, and we get a very flat media landscape. So what we're doing is creating tools that allow communities all over the world to come together, build creative together, and that can then go to a studio and say, hey, 10,000 people created this IP, 100,000 people went and consumed it. There is your case study for why someone would want to, greenlight a, quote unquote, non-traditional, production that might be, seem, in the eyes of a studio as, risky. But because there's that built-in group, it de-risks the creation of those films and shows.
Yeah, and I think David came at it from more of like a creator angle. But I think in general, when we think about access at JumpCut, there's the creator angle, which David alluded to, right? Like not alluded to, very explicitly talked us through, where we're trying to change a system where people who don't fit the Hollywood mold ultimately don't get their stories told. But the other key piece with JumpCut is bringing audiences into the fold. And it's kind of shocking to think that while billions of dollars are being spent on content for audiences, fans are actually excluded from engaging with that content in any meaningful way beyond like the very end of the value chain where they get to consume it. And, you know, brands have figured out that consumers, fans, audiences want to be co-creators in the products and in the stories that the brands have to tell, but somehow Hollywood hasn't tapped into this. So that's something that we're trying to rectify. So when we think about access, it's like access for creators, access for fans and audiences and consumers, because people are inherently creative. I mean, I don't know if you guys go to fanfiction.net a lot, but like the stuff there is mind blowing. And David's going to talk about what we've seen for Uppercut and the quality of submissions that people have been sending in. It's
quite incredible. No, and I think you're right. It's funny. We were on a panel earlier this morning talking about the engagement of the fan communities is essential to the success of any project coming out. And yet those fans who are spending all this time and energy and creative juice kind of promoting this thing they love don't benefit from it in the slightest. And that is always, it's this kind of contradiction in terms of the studio's need for that, but also they're tightly controlled, how tightly controlled they are around those things. But it seems like you've got a unique way of approaching that.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems so crazy that Hollywood hasn't tapped into fans and audiences for co-creation and for IP development, because I feel like not only are they missing out on, you know, lots of creative people having great ideas, but they're also missing out on potentially like the greatest marketing flywheel of all time, right? You have 50,000 people who are tweeting and writing about your movie. That really trumps like a pay and spray $300 million campaign that reaches no one. Or, you know, I don't know how much studios are paying these days for their marketing campaigns, but probably a lot of money.
300 million doesn't sound off base, yes.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And actually, David and I, before we hopped on here, we were having a really interesting conversation about A24, and we were just talking about, you know, how they've perfected their marketing via this incredible social strategy, right? They bring audiences into the story worlds of the movies that they're putting out through incredible activations, like when they made the character from Ex Machina into a person on Tinder during South by Southwest. And then people started interacting with Ava thinking that she was real, and then it turned out she was the protagonist in the movie. And like all of these fun things that they do and all these conversations that they kind of start and curate on social platforms like Twitter and Instagram, they're basically bringing fans into the fold after they've already created something. And what we want to do is we want to bring fans into the mix earlier so that they get to co-create and then participate, you know, in the story. So, yeah.
Maybe talk a little bit about how are you doing that, and what's sort of the strategy around bringing people in and utilizing that, the greatest marketing flywheel, right, of engaging these amazing people that are out there that are maybe not getting their stories told, or how are you finding them, how are you engaging them, and what's some of the ways in which you're trying to go about it that may be a little different, or if it's not different, what's exciting about it to the both of you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, there are two, you know, big verticals or two big pieces that we're tapping into that really, you know, kind of make, you know, what we're doing unique. And the first is ownership. And so up until, you know, really the past 18 months, there hasn't been a way to let creators online, you know, own a piece of the creative that they're putting out into the world. So one of the cornerstones of the projects that we're both launching and also the platform we put together is ownership of the IP that you're contributing commensurate with your participation in these online communities. So that's really important to us. The second is a structured way of actually creating you know, efficient, for lack of a better word, communities online. I like to think of, you know, JumpCut as kind of the 2.0 version of, you know, the online creative process with large groups. We saw, you know, some amazing projects come out with the kind of the first wave of Web3 film projects, where it was a very nascent idea, and so the groups of people were relatively small that were collaborating. And at that scale, it was fine to have 30 or 40 people join a Discord and work collaboratively. But when you talk about going and trying to get 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 people spread across the globe to become a cohesive group trying to build these complex worlds, you need some sort of decentralized structure to organize these groups. And so that's the second big pillar, which we call quests. And so ultimately, and this is one of the differences we'll talk about between our two flagship projects, UPPERCUT and Women of Mystery. Ultimately, we basically divide the creation process into different cohorts, different bite-sized, manageable tasks that organize members and allow them to efficiently build a world. So I think those are the two big pieces: organization and IP ownership, commensurate with participation.
And can you speak more about the organization? Because I think it's a fascinating realm of this. And so we've done some community storytelling we were brought into the Bushido's community and the GSA, both existing successful PFP projects who aspire to tell a greater story and really didn't know kind of how to go about doing that. And so we came in and we taught story, and then we developed that with the community. And it was very much the kind of 20 to 30 person groups that you're talking about. But what we found was the juggle, even with a group that large, was, okay, who is the kind of organizing curator of these ideas that then focuses a lot of great kind of creative ingredients into something coherent, versus satisfying then the group as a whole and the kind of the dynamic tension between the auteur vision and then the community building and how that goes. Because if you've solved that on a kind of global scale, that is a phenomenal thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the short answer is we are learning as we go. We don't have the answer yet, but I think that's the beauty of building. Yeah, right. I think that's the beauty of building in public, right? Is that you're discovering it together. But there are kind of two distinct ways that we're coming at it, but both are united by kind of a vision of how communities are compromised or comprised. And so I'll steal a quote that I like to say all the time, which I think I stole from Bob Iger, who is the former CEO at Disney, thinking about how they think of their customers. So they have kind of three tiers. They call them the waiters, the swimmers, and the divers. So waiters are those people that, they just are dipping their toes in. They might see a movie, once or twice. They may go to a theme park. They're going to miss Easter eggs. They're there for kind of the surface level fun. The swimmers are people that it's like they go to Disney World every year. They've rewatched the movies. They might dress up in a costume. And then the divers are the ones that are, fully immersed in the world. For us, when we talk about creative communities online, our waiters are those who, they might have, never, done a real creative endeavor in their adult life. The last time they did something was like a creative writing exercise, in undergrad or high school. But they have this creative itch, but they don't have a lot of time. And so they're just getting into it. The swimmers are, maybe those who want to spend a little bit more time digging in. And then the divers are those who are, maybe they've, published, self-published their own books or tried to put treatment together and pitched it out. And so making sure that we can access all or provide value for all three of those, sub cohorts is really important. And so knowing that, we have two very different, styles of, organizing and engaging that we're trying. So with our first project, UPPERCUT Training Club, we've gone and what we'd like to say is gamified the experience of creating lore. And so we brought in an incredible creator, director, writer, Kevin Tancherone, who created the Mortal Kombat film series, who has written and directed for Book of Boba Fett on Disney Plus, and the list goes on. But basically, to create this halo of a fictional story where people are kind of are creating lore together through these missions and decryptions that they have to do, which kind of hides the vegetables, so to speak, on the plate. That is in contrast to our other project, Women of Mystery, which Tanya will talk about in a second, which is very much like the curtains are open. We are a creative writers' room together, and we are organizing ourselves into different teams. Ones that are, working on characters, ones that are working on background, story, etc. And we're going to see in real time, is there more engagement when the vegetables are swaddled in something sweet, or can we engage communities by being like very forthright and saying, what's our progress update, what's our how are we doing as a team towards our end goal?
Yeah, and perhaps these different structures attract different audiences, right, and different consumers, because Uppercut is more of like as much as you're creating lore, you're also consuming entertainment, right? Incredible, like high production value video content and this elaborate backstory that was built out. And so you're like going on these quests that were designed for you and solving puzzles. So it's like a digital escape room almost. Whereas Women of Mystery is kind of like, okay, the canvas is pretty much blank. I mean, it's not entirely blank. Mm-hmm. When we get into Women of Mystery, I'll tell you about Ava Morales, who's our character. We like seeded the story with this one character, but ultimately then, anything goes and it's up to the community to decide. And the success of the project is really predicated upon people getting excited about getting their hands dirty and writing and contributing ideas. But we feel pretty confident that this is going to succeed, because when we were doing customer development and talking to people out there in the wild, like both in Web3 and Web2, there are so many people who write for fun, who are creative for fun, who've written like novels or short stories, but they've never ultimately gone anywhere. They just sit there on their desktops or in their notebooks. And so I think these two projects are very different. And we're excited to see how they play out.
The way that you've described them, and Adam and Eb and I having a little bit of experience in some similar episodes of working with creatives and storytelling. The way you describe Uppercut Trading Club is like a single player game, and my background is gaming, and then of course Women of Mystery is more like an MMO, right? More of like a massively multiplayer online game, the way that they're sort of organized. So I guess one of my questions is, you mentioned Uppercut is gamified. How do you guys look at that in terms of gamifying some of the systems? What do you feel is important, and what does gamify mean to you, the community, and what are you learning about those types of systems?
So much.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, full stop. I think the biggest thing for us with Uppercut is we've broken our community into 3 teams, which in the lore of Uppercut we call domos. And each of these teams have the ability to collect points for not only themselves, for the hero that they're building, which is their character, but also for their team in general. And over the course of 10 weeks, which we affectionately call season 0, of the project, these teams are going to be kind of moving back and forth on a leaderboard as they try to unlock, new goals and new missions and exclusive video content that we've created with, the fabulous, stunt team that's portraying some of the characters in the project. And as we get further, down the line, some of the creative contributions that, members, holders will have submitted in earlier weeks will start to reflect themselves in the story. But the primary motivation is this accumulation of points by finishing quests. And those quests, the majority of them are creative. So they are some of our like week 1 items that we had tasked, the community with, were all about developing their own character, who they are, where they're from, what their motivations are in life. And that will start wrapping in future weeks into how they entered into this world, how they relate with one another, and that ends up becoming the building blocks of this universe.
Right. And how are you going about threshing through then? So you say, sorry, individuals can pitch for their characters, and these are, just to be clear, these are PFPs that they own, that they have purchased, that are there, they can now exist in this collective world that you've created.
That's exactly right. So each holder has a 3D generated character associated with them, which is both rendered as a traditional PFP that is associated with the NFT that we see all over the web. But they also have access to full body shots, to an actual 3D model that they can go and they can use in their own digital productions. But most critically, they own or they have non-exclusive commercial rights for their IP and their character, as long as they hold that NFT, or that hero, as we call it in the nomenclature of the Uppercut universe.
Tanya and David, what are some of the surprises that you found along the way? And that comes up when you're starting these new endeavors, right? But what's something that surprised you, or made you nervous, or made you afraid, or how are we going to solve this, or this is happening too fast? We know we've had a couple of those moments ourselves, so just curious what some of your...
It's been plain sailing the whole way, right? It's been great.
Go for it, David.
I think the number one for me, and then I'll pass it to you, Tanya, but is marketing and community, and that there is marketing is not a word that we can use in Web3 projects, because ultimately you can't sell the experience that we're trying to put together. It's about building an actual community with people that believe in the project and the vision and the vision of a more equitable future. And I think that it's a hard lesson to learn, and it was one that was even it was compounded by the fact that we were building this project during this bear market, during the past 4 or 5 months. Really, we started building Uppercut in May. That we started really publicly talking about it, and so the mission of it had to be the driving force. And I think for me, coming from I started working in the Web3 space just about a year ago. It was August of 2021, and it was the biggest mindset shift from where I was previously focusing my energies in like a very much like Web 2 entertainment tech world. So I think that's honestly the biggest lesson, and ultimately I could not be more excited by the community that we've built, both for Uppercut and are building for Women of Mystery, and also the amount of camaraderie and friends that have come out of this. I mean, incredible friend Tess Fenn over at another company called Beam, she organizes a Film 3 meetup here in LA every month, and I get this 30 new best friends, which is incredible. But yeah, so community and marketing I think is the biggest for me.
Yeah,
I think for me, mine is probably a lot more like generic and applicable to just life in general. But my biggest learning was, don't assume things about the people you're building for just because you think that is rational or logical or that makes sense, because people are not the same. Like, people are very different. And I think that goes for for everything. For example, like we always, something that we've been talking about a lot is this ownership piece that David brought up, and how your contributions for Women of Mystery, specifically in the writer's room, are directly commensurate with your ownership stake in the IP. So your contributions amount to points, and then at the end of the season, the points get essentially, equity gets allocated based on like the total pot of points. And so we always thought, this is what makes us so different from Hollywood, because in a traditional writer's room, like ownership is not a thing. I mean, maybe if you're Ryan Murphy, but like otherwise, if you're any other writer, you just don't get to own any of the ideas or the creativity that you kind of unleash and put on paper or on a screen, whatever, in a writer's room. And we were kind of leading with that very heavily in some of our messaging. But then we learned that it's actually the community aspect that seems to be more interesting to our future community members and holders than the ownership piece. The ownership piece is great, but it's what they're most excited about. And we've, done extensive interviews and surveys and spoken to our customers. What we've learned is what they're most excited about is being part of a community of like-minded creatives and creators who all want to get in the same room and build towards amazing stories together. And that, feels like kind of fluffier to me. And that's why I was like, okay, ownership, equity, that's what's important. It isn't. So you can't assume things. So don't assume things.
Right. So interesting. Yeah, because we've certainly found as well the community piece of it. I mean, you're always going to have your investors, your speculators, your whatever. Obviously, that's I think in everything. But yes, the crucial nature of building that community and the excitement that generates is I don't think it's unique to this world, but it's highlighted here in a way that I haven't encountered before.
Well, I also think it just speaks to the nature of the world, right? People must be so disconnected from other people, and COVID hasn't been very helpful in, remedying that, and has just exacerbated what's been a trend. And yeah, Web3 seems like a natural response to all of that, where people can like band together and find common ground and goals and interests. So yeah, it's a really interesting, cool space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, two things is nice as well, but yes,
Well, that was one of the things I was going to say is, two things that come to mind just from this conversation. One that I don't think I've thought about before, and it's a different perspective, is the marketing piece and assumption piece that you both talked about is the antithesis of Hollywood, really, if you really think about it. They have to market, and they do assume everything. They assume the stories and the projects and the marketing aspect of it and who they're speaking to. And then on the other end of the spectrum in terms of control and IP, if you look at somebody like George Lucas, who did have all of the things that we're talking about, it did have control of IP, and now he doesn't. And so what does that mean? Well, now we see, the good of that is there's a lot of stories out there that were not being told, that he didn't want to had no interest in telling. And the bad of that is some people's childhoods get ruined with particularly bad storytelling, and it's a really interesting balance. And I think, both of those things say to me is there's just fine lines everywhere, and it's very nuanced, and it has all kinds of focus and attention that you have to spend to speak to people, to see what the right things are. And we're only going to be figuring that out as you both are, and your companies and your projects are, over the next couple of years, because somebody here, that this could create that sort of George Lucas type scenario where the ownership is not as flexible as you would want it to be, or it's in some cases too flexible with the Creative Commons licenses that we see happening. Does there need to be a Bored Apes t-shirt, or a Bored Apes movie set in space or in Western history, or whatever it happens to be? So I think those things are really interesting that you both are kind of touching on in ways that I don't feel we've had those conversations, at least with the three of us before. So.
And the whole IP conversation is just such an interesting one, and we have it, internally at our company all the time. I don't know if you guys have heard of like Bridgerton musical. I think
the TikTok musical, right? Was that?
Yes, exactly.
I mentioned it, I think, a couple of weeks ago on Twitter Spaces, but basically So this oh my God, TikTok. This Bridgerton musical that originated on TikTok and went viral was just these two women who were passionate about Bridgerton, who created like incredible music and lyrics. And Netflix was at first really supportive of that because, you know, who doesn't love a viral campaign when, you know, it's about your brand or your, you know, your property. And they had originally given them permission for this like kind of spin-off to perpetuate it. But then, you know, they created an album and they won a Grammy, and then they decided to put up a performance at the Kennedy Center and sell tickets for $150 a pop and then create merch. And that's when Netflix was like, hold up. We did not discuss any of this. And ultimately, you know, I guess they couldn't come to an agreement, and Netflix ended up suing them. I think they just dropped a lawsuit recently. But, you know, at the core of that lawsuit is the issue of fans appropriating IP for profit, right? Mm-hmm. And in Web 2, it's like this gray zone where, with regards to monetization and copyright laws, where basically if you're a fan, you're just a hobbyist. Like that's the most you can do. Your best case scenario if your creativity doesn't go anywhere, but there's a very good probability that you get into legal trouble because you're tarnishing the brand or the IP or whatnot, or not going in a direction that is sanctioned by like the parent company. But in Web3, the underlying ownership of tokens gives people this opportunity to this built-in business model and this incentive to create derivative works and build out story worlds. And that's exactly like we want with Women of Mystery. We really want to encourage people to incentivize fan creativity, not punish it. So yeah, I just love that Bridgerton story because it's like the antithesis of everything that we want.
Oh, it's one of the best examples I think I've heard. And it's what I love about it is, yeah, help me, promote this. Oh, but we're not going to pay you anything. You don't get to profit off of this.
Correct.
No, sorry, no. That's going way too far. Which is that line. Those nuances are really, really interesting. So I want to make sure we get to, I think you might have an announcement or two that you want to talk about for your projects and where people can hear about them and what they should know about what's coming up for them. So I want to make sure we give you that time, David and Tanya, whoever wants to go first or collaborate back and forth. The floor is yours. Tell us.
Well,
how do you want to do this, David? I can do like a little Women of Mystery spiel, or if maybe you can get into UPPERCUT first, because we could maybe even demo some platform stuff to you guys, and everyone else who's watching. It could be fun.
Yeah, maybe we do that because spoiler alert: Tanya has the big news, so I feel like we need to save that for a bang.
Okay.
But I wanted to share a little bit about where we are, with UPPERCUT. Because honestly, I was just saying to Tanya, earlier, in the week, how absolutely astounded we've been now that we've formally launched the project. So just so everyone has like a little bit of context, we launched the project officially. NFTs started arriving in people's wallets about 3 weeks ago. But at the beginning of this week was the first week of what I was affectionately calling that, season 0, where people could log into what we call the portal, which is our gated website for members only, and could start getting video messages from the characters and their missions for the week. And a lot of missions this week, a lot of quests that we gave our users were creative, building backstory for their own character. And we thought that would have a pretty good, ratio of engagement with people sending in, quests. And we were floored by the amount of participation. So many so that we haven't even gotten through all of the submissions yet. But we've gotten over 250 unique submissions of IP and content from our community. And we're only limited to 501 users in this first cohort that we put together. And so we have basically a 50% utilization rate. And out of those 250 or so submissions, more than half of them had 500 words or more. And if you think about 500 words, that's like an entire like typed sheet. That's paragraph, paragraph, paragraph. You know, if you're thinking about Google Docs or Word, and that takes a lot of brain power for someone to sit down and really think about it. And these stories, these backstories that you know, people are creating are incredible, intense, and come from such a wide, you know, varied background. Some are you know, heartbreaking, talking about, you know, parents that, you know, were, you know, estranged from their kids, and like it's become the adult characters, you know, mission in life to, you know, find them again. Others are fantastical, you know, that their heroes, you know, are part of like these underground cyberpunk inspired you know, cadres in like Neo Tokyo, and that amount of like self-editing and dedication blew us away, and I think made us just be really happy that what we've been toiling away as a really small team of, you know, 7 people for months and months is like actually, you know, worthwhile.
It's actually resonating with people. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And then and then the other is that it's incredibly high quality. And so pair that with the fact that starting next week, we're actually going to start like having people like Kevin Tancherone and another writer on the project, Stephanie Smith, who's currently one of the lead writers on the John Wick series, The Continental, for Amazon Prime, and our own Winnie Kemp, who's head of creative development here at JumpCut, who's like created projects for Netflix and Amazon and HBO, you know, are going to start working with these users. Just means that we are going to create something really special. But just, you know, the amount, 250 submissions week 1, it was really mind-blowing.
Salute. That's amazing.
Way.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, so we'll see. So like I said, we're week 1 of 10, and so by the end of this, we're gonna have the baseline for a universe, and it makes me really excited about what Tanya has been building over on the Women of Mystery team, because I feel like that's just gonna amp up this universe to the 10th degree.
Yeah, and I'll
beautiful segue.
I'll tell you guys about Women of Mystery. So I don't know if you're familiar with the account at Not Ava Morales on Twitter. If you're not, you should be following that account. Please follow at Not Ava Morales, and everyone who's tuning in, please do the same. So
not Ava Morales, you said? Sorry.
At Not Ava Morales, EVAMORALES. So Ava has been active on Twitter since, I want to say, maybe May. And she is a private investigator on the blockchain. So she solves crimes and mysteries for marginalized communities and communities of people who are afraid to go to the police because they don't get taken seriously. So she infiltrates, she solves mysteries, she brings truth and justice to humans. And we basically created this character on Twitter inspired by, you know, A24 marketing tactics, by Jenkins the Valet, by this like idea of, you know, building out a character in social media spaces. And we started reaching out to holders of different, and Ava herself is a World of Women PFP. Yes. And the reason why we went with a World of Women PFP is twofold. I think one is the non-exclusive commercial rights that were granted with that PFP. But the other reason being, you know, we felt very good about how World of Women was thinking about IP development from day one. You know, the fact that they partnered with Hello Sunshine, and they were clearly thinking bigger than just JPEGs and images. And they had like all of these far-reaching plans around how to build out story worlds and universes. So we were like, okay, cool. World of Women sounds right. So that is our Ava Morales. And we started reaching out to holders of PFPs from different collections, Boss Beauties, World of Women, Women Rise, you name it, all of them, and saying, hey, you know, I'm Ava. Is there a mystery you'd like for me to solve for you? And at first people were really skeptical. They were like, wait, what? Like, what's going on? Are you a real person? Are you not a real person? So actually we first started building all of this in stealth mode. But then once Ava started telling her stories and writing these cases, they very quickly gained traction, because I think people really like that Ava's stories have grit and heart and substance, and they're also authentic and they're funny. And we also try and talk about like different subcultures and social issues that are unique and that people might not necessarily, know about or be exposed to every day. So we did a story about like 2 rival mermaid palaces in Florida, and then climate change activism, and then white supremacy. But then there's also like love and like fun stuff in her stories. So they really started growing on the Twitter, Web3 Twitter community. And the reason why we've been doing all of this and like meticulously writing these stories and building out her character is because she is the character for our first writer's room. So she is the character that we're seeding the narrative with. But that's about as much direction and input that we're giving, because the rest of it needs to come from the community. So essentially what happens in the writer's room that kicks off on October 31st, Halloween, which feels very appropriate for our theme of mystery and, crime.
Yes.
So people will come together and essentially spend 7 weeks building out the story around Ava Morales. What cases does she solve? Who are the villains in the story? Like, what obstacles does Ava need to, surpass in order to prevail in the end? And this curriculum it kind of goes from like high level, like log line and like high concept, big picture, to like very specific details throughout the course of 7 weeks. People are going to learn how to do that. We're also inviting weekly incredible guests for our community to learn from. So writers and showrunners from shows like Umbrella Academy, House of Dragon, The Shield, Chuck. What else? I feel like I'm blanking on a bunch.
That's not a bad slate for just.
No,
exactly.
Pretty good.
Not a bad slate. So it's kind of like this co-creation, educational experience. And then, of course, there's the equity piece. Right? People actually get to own a piece of the IP for whatever that might look like in the future. If this gets published and becomes a comic book, if that comic book then gets optioned and becomes a TV series or whatever. So we're very excited for that. We actually start minting tomorrow. And it feels weird.
Where can we get that?
Yeah.
So you can go to the website, which is www.womenofmystery.xyz, starting tomorrow, and mint your access pass for 0.065 ETH. It's actually really weird for me to be talking about like ETH and minting, because we've been leading with this whole like not Web3 maxi narrative around this project, because we feel like it's really important to open this opportunity up to people in the Web2 space, to creators who maybe don't necessarily care about the blockchain or know what a wallet is or how to create one, but ultimately, still want to be part of that tidal shift in how IP gets developed and owned. So we've actually been like not really talking too much about like being an NFT company or being on the blockchain or any of these things. We're just a collective creativity company, and we're going to tell stories together. So yeah, we're very excited for Women of Mystery and to see what happens and what stories we come up with.
Fantastic.
It's going to be incredibly exciting. And I want to also, on that note, mention that if there's anyone that's, maybe new to the Web3 world that's, tuning into this broadcast, that whole piece about us trying to make it, more accessible means that we're also offering the chance to actually purchase and mint your Women of Mystery Writer's Pass with credit card with our partners at Paper, which is incredibly exciting. I think one of the biggest issues that we're all dealing with in this space is getting new blood in. And I think that there is this like bar that's set, that like when we talk about like, all the nomenclature that Tanya just listed off, and the complexity to, that I'm sure all of us felt the first time, ages ago getting into the space. You have to get your MetaMask wallet, but then you have to have a separate, brokerage account. You have to wait 7 days to transfer your crypto out. And it's quite daunting when you think about it. So we're trying to, our focus is get creators in, and we're trying to ease that on ramp, and hopefully people joining that way will then get exposed, and it just kind of enlarges the pool for all of us, working in the space.
Yeah, and we're actually really excited. We have a pretty robust partnership strategy for Women of Mystery. So what that means is we have a ton of partners in the Web2 space. So we've been reaching out to film festivals. We've been reaching out to like professional creative organizations, to film schools, and onboarding them. So basically giving away access passes to the writers' room for free to their communities, because we want their communities to experience Women of Mystery and what it means to build collective IP together. And yeah, we even, one of our partners is Savannah College of Art and Design, and they're incorporating, the film school there is incorporating our curriculum for Women of Mystery. So this like 7-week writers' room into one of their classes. So we're going to have students completing our story quests and contributing to the writers' room as part of their school curriculum, which we're so excited about. And the professors at the school are really excited about it as well, because they're always trying to, kind of like open the aperture on what are the opportunities that are available in the media space, and how is that changing, and what is that going to look like 5 and 10 years from now. And they ultimately want to prepare their students for life, right? And like what business models exist, and how do they capitalize on all of these emerging technologies. And when they heard our pitch, they were like, yeah, we're in. Where do we sign? Let's do this. So yeah, we're very excited.
So we're gonna need to wrap up, but before that, we want to make sure people know where to go. So we've heard where they can mint. What about reaching you, find people? How can they contact you or follow you, or how do you want them to follow you if you do?
Well, and Tanya and I both we're both pretty active on Twitter, and all we talk about is JumpCut all day. So you can follow me, at VC_Tino. And Tanya?
I'm at Tanya_RZN.
Perfect. Beautiful. Well, any final words or things that you want everybody to know? Or are you guys good?
Well, just want to thank you for putting together the first Web3 Comic-Con, and for such an amazing diverse slate of programming, and also for getting it far and wide, because I know that you guys are streaming on Twitter, LinkedIn, a million other places. So really bravo. Congrats.
I'm going to be tuning into, I think that's the next segment, which is on like comic books, right? Is that the next one?
That's true. We've got a couple of, we've got a publisher friend, and then a couple of people from the traditional comic space coming in to chat.
I'm looking for a 101 on like comic book, like how to make a comic book, like how do you get it out in the world, like publishing, self-publishing, all of these things. So
you've come to the right platform.
Yep. Listen to that, and then we should just chat offline at some point, because yes.
I will walk on that. You will regret saying that.
We won't. We love what you guys are doing. So it's really
amazing. It really is.
Thank you both so much for spending your Sundays with Adam and I and Eben for a short period of time, and we'll just keep the conversation going, and we'll see you in the next room. And yeah, thanks for coming to what we hosted today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys.